Hey guys, how's it going? So today I'm here to update you guys on how my sessions have been going so far. So I've had 8 sessions so far, and first of all, after the 4th session, I started to feel a little bit of anxiety after the sessions, which would last for around the rest of the day. But this anxiety would subside by the next day, so it was never too big of an issue for me. And around the 6th session, this anxiety was dampened quite a bit, so I didn't feel as much anxiety after the sessions, which was nice. But my psychiatrist and I, we weren't too worried about this anxiety increase after the sessions, because what we're doing right now is we're dampening the activity of the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, which is an area of the brain that dampens emotional activity by dampening the amygdala and the limbic system. So by dampening this area that dampens the amygdala and other limbic areas of the brain, it's quite normal to assume that anxiety levels as well as other emotions would increase, because the emotional parts of the brain are less inhibited by the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. And also in the studies that we've looked at, this protocol of dampening the activity of the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex has resulted in increased anxiety in some patients, so it was never really something that we worried about too much. And after 8 sessions now, maybe my emotional experience has become a little bit more rich and my emotions are a little bit less dampened than it used to be. But truth be told, this emotional dampening has never been, well, it's not never been, but for the last around month or so, or maybe even a little bit longer, hasn't been too big of an issue for me. So it's hard for me to really notice too many effects of my treatment so far. But my feeling that the world looks kind of flat and that there's a pane of glass in front of my eyes hasn't been too much affected by my treatments so far. And because these are my main symptoms, if my treatments to the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex continues to not really have a big impact on these symptoms, I will probably move on to a different area. And the area that I will probably move on to is either the right temporal parietal junction or the right angular gyrus. And both of these regions are regions which are thought to be important in the integrating of senses in the brain. And in depersonalization disorder, this area is also hyperactive, and this hyperactivity in this area that is responsible for sensory integration is thought to maybe play an important role in this disconnection that we feel to the outside world and this feeling that there is a pane of glass in front of our eyes. So I will do a couple more sessions of inhibitory treatments to my right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex and see how that goes. But if it doesn't have too much of an impact on my main symptoms, which are the world looking kind of 2D and feeling disconnected from the world, then we will move on to the right temporal parietal junction or the right angular gyrus. And right now we're thinking that we will probably move on to the right angular gyrus, because right angular gyrus is thought to be a more central node in the integration of emotions than the right temporal parietal junction, so it might be more effective to hit this central node of sensory integration. And actually right now, a clinical trial in France with 103 patients just ended in September, and they targeted the right angular gyrus with an inhibitory stimulation as well. And right now we still don't know like the impacts of stimulating the right angular gyrus in this clinical trial, so that will probably come out soon and we will keep our heads out for that. But it'll also be interesting for me to go ahead and inhibit this area on my own as well and see what kind of effect it has on my depersonalization, so that I can also update you guys on how it's affected me as well. So to sum up, I've had 8 sessions so far of inhibitory stimulation to the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, and so far at around the 4th session it's increased my anxiety after the session, but this anxiety was quite short-lived, and by the 6th session around, this anxiety was much less of an issue than it was earlier on in my treatment. And maybe this anxiety was not too big of an issue for us because we are increasing the activity of the emotional regions of our brain, and me having less anxiety now than I used to might be because my brain is getting more acclimated to my emotional regions of the brain being more active, and also my emotional processing might have been improved through my treatment so far by inhibiting the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. But it hasn't had too much of an impact on my main symptoms, which are the sense that the world is flat and that there's a pane of glass in front of my eyes. So I will do a couple more sessions of inhibitory stimulation to my right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, but if it doesn't have too much of an effect on my main symptom, then we are thinking to move on to either the right temporal parietal junction or the right angular gyrus and do an inhibitory stimulation there and see if that has any effects on my feeling of being disconnected from the world, because these two areas are very, very involved in the the sensory integration in the brain, and these two areas are also overactive in depersonalization disorder. And I'll keep you guys updated, and I will make another video after a couple more sessions, and maybe by that time I would have moved on to the next location, but we will see how treating the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex goes in the following sessions. I'll talk to you guys soon.